Alright, welcome to our sitar restringing video. We're going to start by showing a list of tools that you'll need to do the job. Steel wool, street sidewalk chalk. This is a file. Sandpaper will also work, but a nice file like this is good. Pair of needle nose pliers, pair of wire cutters, some kind of hook. You can make them out of a paper clip. This is made out of baling wire. It just has a handle, has a little hook on the end. That's to pull the wire from the inside when you're doing the sympathetic strings. And a brush is helpful just to wipe off the dust from the steel wool after you've used it like that. That's about all you need tool-wise. Okay. You'll also need a set of strings to put on your sitar. We sell these. This is our sitar string set. There's two main types of sitars. Ravi Shankar style, which has the bass strings here and here, and Vilayat Khan style, which doesn't and only has 3 main playing strings instead of 4. So this is your first peg. This is a number 3 steel. This one is your saw, your tonic pitch. That's a .016 phosphor bronze. This is your .022 phosphor bronze for the paw, and the low saw is a .028. Then these are your Chikari strings. Number 1 steel for the paw. For the saw is a number 0, and for the high saw is another 0. Then you have your sympathetic strings. Usually I put a number 1 steel on the lowest saw, and then all the rest are number 0, .09 steel for all of those. And those are the strings you need. It'll vary per sitar, but that'll cover it. This is Ravi Shankar style. Okay, so we're now going to take off the strings that are on the sitar at the moment. You should change your strings once every 3 months or so. You'll get better resonation. They tend to rust over time and things like that. So we're changing our strings. First, take off the top strings, loosen the tension on the top, and use your wire cutter to cut the string. And make sure that you keep the swans and the beads that you need. And then what I usually do is just with your needle nose pliers, I take the strings off of the top strings so that they're just not in the way. So you can just pull them like that until they come off. Throw that away. And then I haven't done anything with the pegs. I'm just going to replace it onto the sitar with no strings attached. Loosen the next one and cut that one. And so we're just going to, don't lose that, get back here. Make sure you don't lose your beads. Like that. All the way along. Okay, you can stop.
2, 1, roll.
I'm going to wear one of these jeweler glasses things so I can see better. When you take the strings off the top, make sure that you don't mix up the pegs. These pegs are hole specific. So this peg only is made to fit into this hole, etc. If you mix them up, you'll have problems. You'll notice that there are markings on the pegs, usually a little cut for 1, 2 cuts for 2, to show you which holes they go in should they accidentally get mixed up. But do them one at a time and put them back. Make sure you don't mix up any of the pegs. That's just the way it is. They're made to fit into each hole individually. Now we're going to, once you get the strings off the top of the bridge may or may not come off. This one seems to be on there pretty well. So if it's on there, I usually just leave it on there, but make sure that it doesn't fall off. If it's loose, take it off and just place it down, and we'll put it back later when we reapply the top strings. At this point, though, this looks pretty solid, so we'll leave it. We're now going to loosen up the sympathetic strings. You loosen them up by turning them clockwise, and just cut the string right in front of the nib here, and then roll it back in. And you do this one at a time for the sympathetic strings. And as you're doing this, you kind of get a feel for how easy it is to move the pegs. And that's good, important information because you can adjust the pegs and the ease of movement of the pegs as you restring them. So you have to be aware of what condition they're in when you're taking off the old strings. Like this one is really hard to turn, so by the time we're finished it'll be easy to turn. And this one I can barely turn. So make a note in your mind of the pegs that need to be reworked a little bit. Part of the stringing process is really working with the pegs to make sure that they're functioning properly. That's part of general maintenance. So then I've cut all the sympathetic strings now. I'll just pull them off here. They're attached to one place at the bottom. And most usually you can just pull them off there. Make sure you don't lose this part here. And the sympathetic bridge also will oftentimes come off. In this case, it's also glued very strongly, so I may not have to remove either of those during the stringing process. But if I do, you just take it, put it down here next to your beads, and you're fine. Next step, we're going to use steel wool, and we're going to polish the frets. A lot of times Ravi Shankar sitars have a little hook down here. Be careful not to hook yourself on that while you're polishing the frets. And so this just gets all the corrosion and the oxidization off of the frets. Sometimes you'll have to spend 20 minutes doing this. Sometimes you can do it in about 2 minutes. This is a brand new instrument from India. We're just restringing it with high quality strings before we ship it out. So the frets aren't really too bad, so I'm just giving them a very cursory polishing, not too much. Sometimes you really have to use a lot of elbow grease to get them to shine. Also be careful because some cheaper frets, you'll have little slivers kind of come in. You can cut your fingers on them or pierce your finger with them, so just be aware of sometimes there are imperfections in the frets, so be careful. This one seems to be a nice sitar. Some sitars have thicker frets, some have thinner frets. Every sitar is a little different. You can kind of gauge the quality of your sitar by when you're restringing it, the quality of the frets, the quality of the wood they use for the pegs, the workmanship that goes into the pegs and the frets, all have an impact on how easy it is to tune the instrument when you're playing it. And this will also smooth out any imperfections that have developed and make the string slide a lot easier as you're pulling notes. You feel a little bit of a nub there just on the finish, so sometimes the steel wool can take that off and smooth it out so the strings don't get caught. So it's an important process. Then, after you've done that, take your brush and brush off all the excess dust before you start restringing. Okay, we're ready to start stringing the sitar. We're going to start with the lower sympathetic strings. We're going to start with the lowest sympathetic string here. This is your saw, and usually I put a number 1 on that. You pull it out, and there's still the wire that you cut, that end, still on it. So then take your needle nose pliers and just pull it off. Throw it in the garbage. And then you have your peg. This has never been, well, it's been strung once. There's not a whole lot of chalk on these. We use street chalk it helps to make the movement of the peg back and forth much smoother. You don't need to chalk the whole peg. Right where it fits in to the instrument, You can see here. After you've played and tuned your sitar for a while, a few months, it'll get quite shiny and smooth where the wood touches the peg. This is a brand new sitar. It really doesn't need to be worked very much, but they weren't moving incredibly smoothly. So I'm going to take a file. This is a flat file, round, the flat edge, and right where the wood meets the peg, I'm going to just rough it up. I'm not taking a whole lot of wood off. That's not the idea. It's just to round it, smooth it, but rough it up right where that happens. So I'm not going this way, which would take off a lot of wood. I'm going sideways on it. And if you need to, you can do the tip too, but usually that's enough. And then you take your street chalk and you chalk it right in that area. All the way around there. Getting a good layer of chalk on. And then the other place that the peg hits is right on the tip, so chalk your tip. This is street chalk. It's not chalkboard chalk. Chalkboard chalk has oil in it. If you use that, it'll do exactly the opposite of what you want, which is make the peg move smoothly. Street chalk doesn't have any oil in it, so it's perfect for our use. You can get it at a dollar store or something, or a Toys R Us, anything like that. So there's the peg ready to be put in. Notice it has one slash here. That means it's the bottom peg. I don't know if you can see that, but that's how they mark them. The next one will have 2 slashes, like that. They're usually marked. I'm going to use a coil of our Roslau number 1. So I'm just going to roll off if I can find the end. Here's the end. If you're using cut string, fine, but if you're using a roll, make sure you don't have your coil explode on you. Be very careful with your coil and keep it in good shape, and it'll last for the whole coil. And you just roll off just as much as you need for one string. Kind of pull it. That's about long enough, I'd say. Cut it. And for the lower ones, just a trick that I do, I kind of bend the tip there before I put it in the hole on the top, just so the hook can grab it a little easier. When you get closer in, they get gradually closer to the edge here, so it's easier to hook them. You don't need to, but the first 4 pegs or so, I usually do that. And then in this case, you put it in the hole, right here, insert it, and then using this tool here, a hook, you insert the hook into the peg hole. The peg's not there. And you hook the wire and pull it through and grab it here. So hopefully you can see that. So now there's wire going in here, coming out the hole. And you take your peg and you insert the wire through the hole, bring it round and put it through again. Each peg should have 1 hole. And then just about 1/8 of an inch, and bend it toward the tip of the peg here. Pull it tight, like that. You want the wire heading that direction toward the inside of the hole. And then you slip it in and get the peg so it enters the hole on the other side, and then turn it about 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. After smoothing the peg out and roughing it up a little bit and putting the chalk on, it goes much easier. Then bring it down to the end here. A lot of times you won't have this bridge here. You won't even have your sympathetic bridge at this point, but in this case we have both. Get about that much, about a finger length, and cut it. So I have a little extra wire that I wasted, but that's okay. And that's the right length. And then I'm going to tie a knot onto this end. Knot tying, we should have a whole thing on knot tying. Okay, so this is the correct length. Now we're going to tie a knot. So you take it and you judge how much of a loop you need to get it through the bottom nub there. That should be enough. And you want to leave a little tail. I don't know if you can see that. You're doing that. And you're grabbing it. So you're putting this over that, grabbing it with your thumb. And that's about enough of a tail, maybe just a little bit longer. And then you twist. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you have a little tail left. That's what it looks like, right? Can you see that?
Just a minute. Yeah.
And then you want to bend this extra tail through the loop and bend the last bit down. Like that. It helps to have fingernails. So then it looks like that, pretty much. Everybody's kind of got their own style of doing knots, but that is a slip knot. And you have the loop here. And we're now going to take this. So if you can do it, we're going to move it. It's coming out of the top now with a loop on the end. And we're going to slip it underneath the frets. All the way without getting it tangled. And just slip it underneath. The first one's usually easy. A lot of times you won't have the sympathetic bridge on the instrument yet. In this case we do. If you do, it's a lot easier. The sympathetic bridge will move around for the first half of your sympathetic stringing. So I've got it underneath the bridge. If the bridge stays on and the sympathetic bridge stays on, no problem. Just put it underneath. And then bring this down in here. And put it on that nub there. And this is important. Now, with your fingers, take the slip knot and move it down and close the slip knot onto the nub so you take off all the slack there. Otherwise, it'll be hard to tune it later because it'll keep slipping. So you kind of take care of it beforehand. Now with a bridge here, I'm kind of holding it low. And I'm just going to tighten it up. Make sure it all lines up top. And you want it going through the right place. This is the spot here for it, right there. You can see.
The center.
Yeah, they're all going to be there. And you want to push it down here so you have enough room for all of your things. And you want the slip knot down there. And notice the tail that went under is on the bottom, not the top. So it's not sticking out where you can poke your fingers. The knot goes over. The little slip knot goes under here. The little piece on the end is underneath. And if you do that, you'll get a very clean thing where you can put your finger down here and you won't get poked. So that's it. We're just going to keep doing that for the next one. Same thing. Pull it out. Do it one at a time. Leave all the other pegs in while you're doing it. Once you've chalked one peg, if it's tight like down here, you can take the next peg out, but only do one at a time so you don't get the pegs confused. So this here, sometimes there'll be a little pencil mark that shows you where the wood meets the hole. There's not really a whole lot to do here. I don't have any shiny spots because it's a brand new instrument. It's never been played. So I'm just kind of cleaning up the chalk that was there before and making sure everything's good. But these pegs look nice. And then you just chalk it again. So you repeat that process 13 times. You want, if you could just focus here, you want to make it so that they're going one at a time from this direction to this direction. They're all lined up. You don't want them crossing each other. You want to keep them really neat. So this one is at the far end slot. The next slot will be this side. The next slot will be here, here, here. So they kind of fan out in a fan. You can see they've been doing that. And that's important. If you're tidy in the way you do all this, the end effect will be a whole lot more efficient for the person playing the instrument.
All go through the center.
Yeah. I think we're good. And then Next one we're going to switch to 0. That's the only one I use 1 on. Everything else is 0. These 0 coils. So. Sometimes your holes will be a little bit easier to put the string in than others. Fishing it out can be a problem, or it can be easy depending on how the sitar is made. Put it through. Put it through again. Bend about 1/8 of an inch. Pull it tight. Pull it through. Slip it in. Twist it 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Bring it down. Measure it. Just enough there. Tie your knot. So being consistent at tying your knots will really help with the process. When you put this through, you want, I don't know if you can see this or not, you want this to be going through with the wire coming around, and then the part that curls around the main wire. That's the position. Can you see that at all?
Somewhere. Yeah, now I can.
Okay, so the wire's coming along.
No, again. Somewhere darker, front.
See that?
Yes.
So you're coming along, the wire comes along, and then it wraps around and around and around. So you want this thing to go through that side, not the other side. Just as a general rule, it'll prevent squeaking on the upper strings and keeps you consistent. If by chance this little tail is too long, you can cut it, but it's great if you don't have to. It saves you time if you can just measure it right, and sometimes you make them too short, but that's about where you want it. And then bring it through. I make those knots look easy, but I've done a lot of knot tying. So it's always a good idea to just take a piece of wire and practice tying your knots. It'll make doing the sitar so much quicker and fun instead of like pulling teeth. Comes in, goes through with the tail facing downwards. Get all your slack out if you can. And then make sure that it's right next to the other one going this direction, and tighten it up. Make sure also that it's in the right slot and that it's not twisted or caught anywhere. So you can use your fingernail to kind of like move it up. Push it so that it's all kind of neat and right next to it, right? Makes it easy when these things don't come off, actually. That's it, and you just got to do it over and over again. I think that's enough for now.
On the smaller bridge, is there like a proper groove where it needs to go over?
Yeah. We start from this side and keep going. So if you could just focus on that. So you ready?
One. Yeah.
So notice the grooves are in the back toward the bottom of the instrument. This is the lowest peg. This is the next peg. A lot of times there's a little bit more space in between these two. And then you just, every other peg, as you go up the instrument, you go that direction and you fill them all up. Cool. As you fill them up, if this thing is moving, then you can put it in the middle and adjust it later.
Great.
Okay, so I'm just finishing up the sympathetic strings. This is the last one here. Just fish it out. This last one can be a little bit hard to get out sometimes. Gotta get it. Here it comes. All the pigs have been chalked and worked with a little bit with a file so that they're smooth. And measure it, cut it off right about there. Do your knot. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10. 10 turns. Okay. And so this should look like this, kind of a fan shape, so that they're not on top of each other. This should be where there's nothing sticking out in your fingers. You can shoot down there. It's always a good idea, in my opinion, to tune up the sympathetics before you move on to the next stage. I've discovered that something was tangled or something, so let's get a note. So I can tune it up to C sharp. So and those all tune up. Those aren't really very in tune, but at least we know they're going to work. Then you're ready to go to the upper playing strings. You start here in this direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So string them this direction. So this is ma sa pa sa. So we're going to start with ma. Again, you can see it's a little bit shiny there, so you want to file that down, rough it up. Like that, it's ready. And then you want to do a number 3 on this one. It's a number 3 here. And when you're doing these upper ones, the first 1, 2, 3, 4 pegs have beads or swans, so you got to remember to put those on. There's different types of bottom pieces. If you look down here, you can see that's where we're going to tie those on. And they're all slightly different, so you have to kind of work with the one you got, figure out where to tie them. Usually the way it works is you tie the ma onto this one and then you skip one and tie it onto the next one, but this one is slightly different. This one, I think you just put this one here and the next one there, so it's a little different than normal. So you start with your knot. Once you get to the upper strings, start with your knot. So you have to gauge how big to make the loop, and that just comes with experience. I'm going to make it about like that. Five, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and even more so, it's important to get the right side to put this through. So this is, again, the wires going around and then spinning around.
Just put the yellow envelope behind the loop.
So you can see the wire comes up here, it goes around and spins around. You put it through like that. So when you put it on the instrument, you put it with this down again. This is a little long, so I'm just going to clip it. So if it's too long, just clip it. And then you're going to fit it on here. Hopefully it'll be big enough. Yeah. And that fits right on there. Right? You don't want too big a loop or you'll get your knot way up there. Now in this case, the bridge is already on there, it didn't come off, so it makes it real easy. And then you get up to here, about a hand span, so from your tip of your little finger, the tip of your thumb, and that's as much slack as you need. Right? So from the hole, right there, you just gauge about a hand's width, and that way you have enough. You've already chalked your peg, but before you put it on, you gotta remember the swan here. The swan goes on the ma string. This is called goosing the swan. Put it through the back.
Goosing, where did that word come from? In Hindi, it's called gusawing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And then you also have to figure out, you have to get these through here. Sometimes you can slip them through without having to worry about it, but sometimes there's a hole. Depends on the sitar. Get just enough so that when you put it down like that, it doesn't touch the bottom of the wood. So you put it in, you look here, this should be about 3/4 of the way down, but not far enough to scratch the wood surface. And then you
Anti-clockwise.
see that? And you want to get these as even as possible as you go down. It's about the right pitch. Look at.
क्या हाल है जी एक मिनट कॉफ़ी ले आऊँ कॉर्नर पे
बढ़िया है सर.
Is it still rolling?
Yep.
Same thing with the saw. You just kind of file it, chalk it. Okay, so now we're going to put the saw string on. This is 0.016 phosphor bronze. This one uses a bead at the bottom. The reason usually you make you skip one of these things down here is so that the bead doesn't get too close to the swan and bump it.
Mm.
This one seems to have been designed to avoid that problem, so you don't really have the issue. Unraveling the string. Okay, so again, you tie the knot. That loop seemed to work pretty well. About that size. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That. Put it through. And if it's too long, you can clip off that little tail. I usually end up clipping the upper ones just so you get really clean knots. Check out here. Notice that the moss string turns counterclockwise. So the string goes around the right side like that. Whereas the next one, the saw string is going to go around this side. Like that.
Clockwise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Different. Again, you put this on. And bring it over to here. Measure it. Cut it. Grab your tuning bead, wherever they may have gone to. Here's one. And again, for the 3 and the 16, you can put them through and then put it through again. Let's see that, come on. And then measure it, don't get too much slack. Too long a tail here, that's about the right thing, right? So, you're gonna hold it here, put it in. If it's a little too long, you can always cut it, so it's no big deal. And then you wrap the string around that tail so it holds it in place. Come on.
This needs to come here.
Let's come this way. Yeah, na Chavi. Oh, Benson.
Now we're going to the paw string. This is a 0.022 phosphor bronze generally. Once it gets up to this thickness, you don't have to put it through twice. You just put it through once and bend it down and it's fine. It's not going anywhere. So things get a little bit easier. I'm not doing a whole lot to these pegs. This is a brand new instrument. Sometimes you really have to work the pegs if they're in need of some love. The 22 and the 28, the paw and the saw have their tuning beads up here. So we will do that. Make sure you give yourself enough tail, because these take up a little bit more wire when you twist them than some of the other ones. Same knot. You can adjust it with your tool if you need to. as the wire gets harder, it sometimes gets a little harder to stay in place. So, this one's going to go here. No problem. So,
Look at here, yeah.
you measure it here.
So Vincent, what do we up to?
And here, they don't give you a little slot, so you have to put it through a hole. So just remember to put it through the hole. And then, don't forget to put your tuning bead in before you put it on your peg. And then you just slide it into the hole, out the other end, and leave about that much. Bend it down. With your thumb, come on, cooperate. And then you can just pull up and slide it in. And
Anti-clockwise.
yeah, these all go around this way, everything else. And to make sure it's in the right slot, this moves slots. So you just gotta. That's the paw. That's the low saw. This is the last string where you need a bead.
Oh, you took the bar? Yeah, I drove maybe a couple times, but it was such a big hassle and that thing that you went on. So this is bullshit. So should I do it? I said, I'm just doing it for practice. It's a little practice thing. It's okay.
It's okay for practice.
Okay. Your low saw uses a .028 phosphor bronze. And tell me what here.
Another electric one? Oh, really?
There you go. On a 28, I usually use my pliers just to grab the tail and pull it through. And I also use it to shape it.
Hey, Robbie.
Hey, how's it going, man? How's your foot?
Better, much better. Thank you.
That goes in the second last.
Yep.
The last bead.
Down. It's a little hard to find the hole. Trying to get, when you roll the wire on the pegs, you're trying to get them as evenly as possible. Okay. And then you have the three Chikari, pa, saw, and high saw left. So it's like that. They all go on this last nub here. It's looking like that. It's great if you can get them so that when you move your hand along there, you don't get poked.
Mm-hmm.
C or C sharp?
C sharp.
I would like, what key is this?
It's C now, but
Sorry, what key is
it's in C now, but
C?
no, I'm gonna tune it to C sharp.
What is that, D sharp?
D sharp.
Yeah.
What do you like?
I like D sharp. If you think that sounds good.
D sharp is pretty high. D is
So the Pa uses a number 1 steel.
Let me play, let me see.
I'll go with C sharp.
Let's see if you play, let's see.
This is here.
The other magic system that I bought from here, this one is very lucky. You can, does this sound better than that? Another setup is very important.
So you're back to thinner wire. Steel wire is a little different from the brass. So sometimes tying these last ones can be a little tougher because you have a bigger loop.
Oh, I've been working out a lot. My son made me join the gym. I got stronger.
Yeah, I joined the gym too.
You look better. You look like you don't get better.
So this first one goes here and the other ones just go on top of it. Now this one, since there's no bead, you just put it on and you're back to going through once, wrapping it around and going through again. That way it doesn't slip out. That's Pa. This is going to be Sa above. These are your chikaris. These I use 0 for both of them. Some people use 0 and double 0. I find that 2 zeros works fine. Everybody's got their preferences. Some people will use different gauges for different strings. Some people use a number 4 instead of a number 3 on the Ma string, for example. Some of that's personal preference, and some of it's you have to match your instrument. Some sitars, like Huron Roy's, typically use a little heavier gauges just because they're more heavily built. You need a little more power to get them resonating. So you have to just kind of play it by ear, as it were. So these are going to use zeros. Trial and error, figure out what works best for your sitar and for your physical body.
Mm-hmm.
This one is going to go right over the other one. Right there. Pull it off to the side a little bit so it's parallel. You can do that. Measure it. These last two go up on shikari posts. So you go through the peg, through and through again. I'm going to block off your camera shot here in a second. Just by doing this. Last but not least, your high saw card. It's always good to change your strings every few months. Sitar will sound a whole lot better. I think a bench to work on when you do this really helps a lot. I have a couple tubla rings underneath the sitar to stabilize it. Makes it easy. That's basically it. You know, you'll have to tune it, of course, and the strings will stretch out for a minute, but that's kind of what you want it to look like. As much as possible, no sticky ends there to stick you. And keep your spacing when you wrap your strings along the post even, like that. It looks good. This could even be a little bit farther in. You know, it's better to keep it less tension pulling this out. You could actually move this back and move it a little bit closer to there. It's always a good idea not to put too much torque. If you put it too high up, it's pulling it that way. So put it pretty close to the base, and that's about it.
Cool. Sitar stringing video.